Part 1.
Today, in our series about celebrity families, the TV presenter Tanya Edwards talks about her first job and also about her daughter Maddie, a pop star and model. Tanya, your first job was in children's television, wasn't it?
When I was asked to audition for a job presenting on children's television, I didn't want to do the job at all. I'd always wanted to be an actress and had done a lot of acting at college. In fact, it was the closest thing to acting that I could possibly have chosen, because it was presenting a live programme, so having been on stage in college, productions came in handy. In those days, we didn't have talkback. You know, that's where you have a little gadget stuck in your ear and you can hear the producer talking to you. So we had to rely on signals from the floor manager, which worked fine.
You had an extraordinary boss, didn't you?
Yes, Paul Broadley. He was a very well-respected programme editor. He taught me so much. He seemed quite old to me when I started. He was a grandfather. But he had this way of understanding what children could enjoy watching. He was absolutely determined to produce the best children's television, whether it was something about wildlife on safari or how to make a chocolate cake. He was devoted to the programme, completely single-minded about it, and expected us to feel exactly the same.
But you enjoyed it.
Oh, yes. And there was always something different. I even did parachuting for the programme. There I was, leaping out of this aeroplane with the cameras on me, trying to smile, although it was pretty scary. The stupid thing was that the jump went fine, but I fell over running back to the car carrying the parachute and broke my ankle. I thought my boss would be furious, but in fact he was okay about it. And I was amazed that lots of the children who watched the programme sent me cards. One even sent me a cake.
And your daughter is Maddie, the singer and model. Did she always want to be famous?
Well, we always had a lot of music in the house when she was young. I wouldn't say that I knew that she would do something special. I had to persuade her to learn an instrument. But I do remember one day she was supposed to be doing her homework, and my husband came down the road, and there was Maddie leaning out of the window playing her flute for all she was worth. It was a nice sunny day, and people were stopping and listening. And Maddie was bowing and really enjoying the attention.
And she still does.
Well, these days, years later, when I watch my daughter singing in front of a big crowd, there's always this curious thing. I suddenly realise that practically everyone is thinking that she's brilliant. It's not just me thinking that's my little girl. It's the whole room sharing the experience. It's not all roses, though. When Maddie had a bad patch with her singing career, she was taken on by a modelling agency.
Another glamorous job.
Well, I don't think that modelling's at all easy. And I know she finds it hard when people back at the agency don't think she looks right for a particular job. You know, she's too tall or something, or not young enough. It can be hard, even if, like Maddie, you know you're beautiful.
And how do you both deal with your fame?
Oh, we've talked about it. There is a certain look that people get on their faces when they recognise you. And I think probably that that's what some people miss when they're no longer famous. But it also means that you can't go to the shops in peace. And that can be tough. So is reading about yourself in the paper when what's being said is a load of rubbish. But you just have to learn to cope with that side of it.
Part 2.
Good evening and welcome to the programme where, as you know, we go out and talk to people who run their own companies. Today we're talking to Richard Porter, who makes large concert organs as a profession. Richard, tell us, just how did you get into this area of work?
Well, I play the piano, and as a child I had a good teacher who wrote her own music, and I always wanted to be a composer too. However, my parents persuaded me that what I needed to do was go to college and study how to make musical instruments, rather than play them, because they saw more of a future in that. And now I make the organs which are played in churches and concert halls all around the world. The one thing that I never intended to do was become a businessman, which is what I am now, really, as well as being an instrument maker.
So, when did you start making organs?
About 5 years ago. I started from a room in my house, but now I have my own workshop.
So it must pay.
Well, an organ sells at £9,500, which means around £3,500 profit for me, I suppose.
And how long does it take to build one?
It might take me 3 months to complete one. And when I say 3 months, I mean 3 months of working 70 hours a week.
Oh.
Although that sounds a lot, I have to say I don't mind, because I love the work, and I get to meet lots of interesting people. Most of my commissions are from overseas clients, and they're nearly all the result of personal contacts. I rarely use advertising these days.
So you make a living out of it?
Not really. The most profitable part of my business is actually mending organs, generally old large ones, so they can be used for concerts and recording sessions. That can earn me up to £300 each time, which is just as well, because I do need to have money available to buy the raw materials for the larger organs. There's a lot of investment to make before I can start to build. I get the wood from Britain, but most of the other components come from France or Germany.
And I understand you've made a big decision recently?
Yeah, I've decided to take the opportunity to move my workshop to a former schoolroom that has become available in Lincolnshire, about 100 miles away.
So you're moving house as well?
Yeah, we're moving there in 3 months' time.
Tell me about the new workshop.
Oh, it's a lovely old building attached to the town hall in a small market town. In return for using the workshop, I've agreed to spend 40 days a year working as a museum attendant. There's a small museum in the town that has visiting exhibitions, but is only open on certain days in the year.
And is that something you're looking forward to?
Not really, but it means that I save around £4,000 a year because, apart from paying the heating bill, the workshop is rent-free.
Ah.
That's the great thing about the place. It's also very close to our new house, so I'll have the luxury of walking to work each morning, which is nice.
Is it easy to find a building that is suitable as a workshop?
No, it isn't. It's very easy for the instruments to get damaged, so the environment must be dry. None of the buildings I've worked in so far have been dry enough. The new workshop is perfect in that respect.
All right. Well, best of luck to you in that new project. Now, I think you're going to play us a piece on an organ which you built yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Part 3.
It's been described as the fastest ball game in the world and is played in places as far away as Australia and South Africa. But it actually comes from our western neighbours over in Ireland. Many of us know next to nothing about this sport, so it will come as a surprise to learn that it has been played competitively all over our country since the 19th century. Sean McGinn of the British Gaelic Athletic Association is here to tell us a bit about the sport of hurling. Hi Sean, thanks for coming. Could you give us a brief description of hurling?
Sure. Well, it's played on a pitch of around 140 metres long and 85 metres wide, although for youth matches it's considerably smaller. There are 2 teams of 15 people, and each player has a slim bat called a hurley, which is made from ash wood. Players use the hurley to propel a small leather ball, which is slightly bigger than a tennis ball. There are 2 ways to score points during a match. By scoring into the goal and past the goalkeeper, whose hurley is slightly bigger than the outfield players, just to give him a chance. Or you can score by hitting the ball over the bar, but between 2 long posts. A goal scored past the goalkeeper is worth 3 points, while putting it over the bar is worth 1.
Well, that all sounds relatively easy, is it?
Not so easy as all that, I'm afraid. As you said earlier, it is the fastest ball game in the world. A good hurler can hit the ball up to 150 kilometres an hour, and the ball can travel as much as 110 metres. There are also a few rules that make the whole thing trickier for the players. You can't just pick up the ball from the floor. You have to flick it up using the hurley. You can't carry the ball in your hand for more than 4 steps, so you have to run while balancing the ball on the hurley, which is no easy thing. There are also restrictions on the way you can tackle another player, so all in all it's a sport that requires a high level of skill and years of practice.
And tell us how popular the sport is outside Ireland.
Well, the history of Ireland is dominated by emigration. While the country itself has a population of less than 7 million, it's often claimed there are over 70 million people around the world with Irish ancestry. Nearly 11% of Americans see themselves as Irish Americans. My own parents came over to Britain from Galway in the west of Ireland in the 1930s. Wherever these emigrants went, they took their sport with them. So now hurling is played in places such as Britain, the USA, Canada, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, as well as places in continental Europe. For example, there are teams from Brussels, from Luxembourg, from Munich, Paris and Zurich.
And what would you say the appeal of the sport is?
As well as the cultural aspect, keeping in touch with your roots. The game itself is so fast-moving and so skillful that it's hard to take your eyes away from the action for even a second. Also, in these days of the commercialisation of sport, when you have footballers or Formula One drivers earning more in a week than most of us will see in a lifetime, it's important to remember that even at the very highest level, hurling players are amateurs. That, and the absence of violence between supporters, even in the most important matches there's no segregation between rival fans, gives the sport a purity and nobility that I don't think you get in other sports.
Thanks, Sean. I think we all know a little more about what sounds like a fascinating sport. That was Sean McGinn of the British Gaelic Athletic Association, talking about the sport of hurling.
Part 4.
The most endangered cat species is the Iberian lynx, sometimes called the Spanish lynx. Should this species die out, it would be the first feline extinction since the Smilodon, commonly known as the saber-toothed tiger, 10,000 years ago. Recent studies estimate the number of surviving Iberian lynx to be as few as 100, which is around 400 less than there were in 2000. What does an Iberian lynx look like? Their leopard-like spots particularly distinguish it from its cousin, the Eurasian lynx, and it is also smaller, with a head and body length between 85 and 110 centimetres. Males can weigh between 12.9 and 27 kilograms, which is about half the weight of the average Eurasian lynx. The lynx can live up to a period of 13 years. The Iberian lynx's size means that it typically hunts for animals no bigger than rabbits or hares. Rabbits would account for more than 70% of the lynx's food, but due to Spain's declining rabbit population, the lynx has been forced to attack larger mammals, such as young deer or roebuck. The Iberian lynx hunts alone and follows its prey even up to distances of 100 kilometers. Or it lies in wait for its prey for many hours. It uses the 4 sets of whiskers on its ears and chin to sense its victim. They are active at night. They stay active in winter, and their fur becomes thicker and paler. In extreme weather, they take shelter in caves or trees. The Iberian lynx was once widespread all over the peninsula, but is now restricted to very small areas, mainly mountainous areas covered with vegetation. Its drastic decline over recent decades is due to loss of habitat, reduction in prey, and high non-natural mortality from roadkills, predator control and hunting, although it is under legal protection and it is no longer legal to hunt them. It was recently thought that the only breeding Iberian lynxes were in the Doñana National Park in Andalusia, southern Spain, but in 2007 a previously unknown population was discovered in Castilla-La Mancha in central Spain. In March 2005, for the first time, Iberian lynxes managed to breed in captivity. 3 healthy cubs were born at a breeding centre in Doñana. In 2009, it was announced that 3 more cubs had been born in the same centre. Typically, a mother will give birth to 3 cubs after a gestation period of 60 days. Iberian lynx conservation is now underway through political campaigning and lobbying from individuals and organisations such as SOS Lynx. Important progress has been made in a number of ways. The foundation of the breeding programme in Andalusia, prevention of further construction in areas the Iberian lynx lives, and the halting of proposals for new roads in problematic areas, such as the new motorway that had been planned between Ciudad Real in La Mancha and Córdoba in Andalusia. Despite these successes, challenges and conflicting pressures remain. The World Wildlife Foundation has been urging Spanish authorities for over 2 years to close a road which crosses the Doñana National Park, As Callum Rankin of the WWF says, with such a small population, the accidental loss of just one individual on the road brings the species closer to the brink of extinction.